Tom will just have to get caught up.
Let's see. I gotta,
Speak to the devil. And actually, he's not late.
no, he's not.
They've got a couple seconds.
Do you wanna, say this is what we're doing and then,
You're doing that cat first?
yeah, as soon as we say, say everybody's here, except for Marla.
I didn't see it, I heard.
Okay, good evening. This is a workshop session for the city of Ottawa, Illinois. And we did, advertise that we were doing this and ask if anybody had any comments or something that they could email either the city clerk or the mayor, in which no one has. So with that, we'll begin the budget workshops session.
We're gonna-
Do roll call.
I'll just say for the record that we have the mayor and all commissioners present except for Commissioner Rodriguez.
Okay,
And we're gonna start with NCAT, so Kim Zimmerman is here.
Okay, for NCAT's budget for 2022, our revenues from our federal 5311 grant are 307,579. Our Illinois DOPE grant is 2,074,930. The miscellaneous grants we have received, which include our CARES grant, Rebuild Illinois capital grant, another capital grant, and our Section 5339 grant, total to $2,401,732.69. We anticipate $65,000 in fares, $25,000 in service contracts, $45,000 in donations, and $200,000 in Medicaid, which would bring the total revenues to $5,119,241.69. We plan on spending that money on administrative costs at $90,000, the clerical, which includes our dispatch, at $275,000, full-time drivers, $103,000, part-time drivers at $675,000. That also includes just a part-time facilities individual, which does some cleaning and miscellaneous work for us. Dues educate, we don't have any overtime anticipated. Sorry, I was skipping the zeros. Should I have been reading them? I apologize. Dues education and seminar for travel and meetings, $215,000. Dues and subscription, $3,200. Social Security, FICA, fringe benefits is $260,000.
hey, Kim,
Yes.
when you said dues and subscription, did you say 210,000?
So
21.
21.5, sorry, I put the comma in the wrong spot, I apologize. 21,500, and then dues and subscription was 3,200. Thank you. The FICA was 260,000. Office supplies are $10,000. Our operating supplies are $50,000. Repairs and maintenance, $160,000 with licensing because we're expecting to get new vehicles this year at $1,300. Telephone and internet is $24,000. Postage, $1,000. Gasoline, $200,000. Publishing fees for $2,000. Utilities, $30,000. Miscellaneous funds, $10,000. Reimbursement for IVCH, which is now St. Margaret's Health, that's our purchased transportation contract, is $300,000. Advertising and promotional at $10,000. Contractual professional services, which is our corporate counsel, auditors, the software program that we use is $58,000. Contractual computer repairs at $7,000 and custodial services at $3,300. No insurance. The operating lease is $18,000. Right now, that's currently the lease for our bus barn. And furnishing lease, our office furniture is $7,000. Permanent transfer is $0. Equipment is $290,000, and I'll make a note that that's a really big increase from the $26,645 from last year, but that is part of the rebuild grant we received. $135,000 for surveillance cameras on the buses and $135,000 for 2 new vehicles. So we put those under the under the equipment line item. Construction in progress, which includes the funding for the parking lot, the roof funding at $783,000, and the 5339 funding. So that construction in progress total is $1,761,354.40. Grand total of expenditures at $4,370,654.40. It's really hard to say big numbers. I'm sorry, I'm not used to doing that. With the balance being a positive 748, 587.29. Any questions? We did move, I didn't make a note of it, we did move some administrative personnel into the dispatch, so that budget went down a little bit and the other line item increased. Other than that, I think everything was relatively close, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Kim, I got a question on a couple items.
On which one?
A few items here.
Oh, okay.
On number 160,
Okay.
other employees. Our current budget's showing that it's got 94,000 in it. Our year-to-date's sitting at 26,898. Previous years were never higher than 35.
Right.
Why the substantial jump up to 103,000?
So I budgeted for 2 additional full-time employees if expansion were to happen. I wanted to make sure we had some potential in there to put full-time employees there.
Right, and what we budget, JJ, basically we turn this into the state and that's how we get reimbursed. If we don't put it in there, then we're not going to get reimbursed for it. When we send this into the state, okay, we have to put in what we think we're going to be doing the coming year.
So if NCAT expands service hours or just we need extra drivers, I just wanted to have some cushion in there in order to requisition dollars from our grant funds for 2 additional employees, full-time employees. We
don't
also
ask for it, you don't get it.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying if,
Yeah.
if we're not if we're not using it, why is it in the budget?
because if we don't put it in and we do need it in, like, let's say in August, we decide we want to put a full-time driver in, Streeter or in LaSalle, Peru, then we don't have that option because our budget's not written that way.
Okay. And also,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Item number 260.
Okay.
50.
260, the fringe benefits.
Yeah. Our current budget's got 283,000 in it. Our year-to-date's at only 35,000, but we're putting it to 260.
Right. So with that, we only reimburse the city because that's a city-funded thing. So we reimburse the city when we get paid from the state. So we have not been paid yet on that. So we haven't paid the city. So our year-to-date looks lower, but I believe Elena, she threw a lot of numbers at me today, but we're over 100,000 right now with that. We just haven't, it's not been billed.
It hasn't hit the books yet.
Correct, yes, essentially, yes. So yeah, that 260,000 does also include the FICA and all that stuff for the, 2 new full-time employees or additional part-time staff that was budgeted for.
Number 344, gasoline and diesel.
Yes.
Current budget's got 220 in it. Like our highest actual's been 140. Year-to-date's at 67, requesting 200,000. I presume that 67 is probably low because with COVID, ride share has probably been down.
Correct. But again, also as Commissioner stated, if we cut our budget too much, it's really hard to request it in the following years. So we keep it kind of high just in case we do build, and then we don't have to beg for it in the
I
future.
don't think anybody can successfully predict what gas prices are going to be either.
Well, as you see though, we were at 140 in 2019, 2020, and this year has been way off. I mean, as far as our transportation is concerned. We do look at the future in our minds, basically, of having a full-time bus like we have in Ottawa, over in Peru, and over in Streeter. And we also are looking at Saturday, opening up too on Saturdays, once everything starts calming down. And, you know, people can actually start riding, people got a trust to start riding again. I mean, a lot of people aren't, you know, taking transportation right now. They just aren't leaving the house. And plus you got Zoom doctor meetings and stuff like that, so.
Right. I'm just, you know, looking at 219 actual and what was budgeted this year, and obviously what was budgeted this year, and
But that's a lot of gas.
obviously COVID.
Right.
The number is going to be lower, but, you know, but it's a $60,000 jump from 2019, 2020.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really just for expansion purposes and, you know, the potential gas prices going up.
Anything else, JJ?
No, that's all I got. Thanks.
All right.
Anybody else have questions?
Kim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. Next.
Welcome to stick around.
You got volleyball?
She is a volleyball coach, that's why I look.
Here, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll start on the police budget, which is really interesting. You may want to miss your dinner for this one.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Okay, so in looking at this budget, like everything, we take into account the revenue sources and obviously the general corporate fund, but we try to trim it down to the best we can, utilizing a lot of our costs are reoccurring costs, whether it's replacing squad cars or whatever the case may be. But again, the largest portion of our budget becomes the employee cost, so the benefits itself. The administrative went up with an increase or a request for an increase of 26,000. The clerical, which covers our telecommunicators and the AFSCME union, that's 925,000. That is an increase of 35,000 this year based on the collective bargaining agreement, but also the additional employee that we were finally able to put in, which we thought we had, and unfortunately we did have somebody resign. So we're going through the hiring process to staff that dispatch center to 12 again. The next one is the other employees, and that's dealing with the police officers themselves, the union contract. It does cover the compensatory time that's going to be reduced based on the collective bargaining agreement, so that does have hours added in there, but we were still able to reduce that number down by 156,000. The next one would be the overtime. This year, obviously, like everything else, and in discussing, you know, the fuel costs and everything, COVID kind of played havoc on a lot of the events that normally would be staffed by police officers. We do think that $15,000 reduction would be conservative, and I'm hoping that we could have done more, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out with city events or any type of you know, future events because of what COVID did. We were fortunate, I think, to keep that number low, regardless with the number of events that we did have. But again, that's a reduction that I requested for 15,000. Everything else, the special duty no longer exists. Special duty is, or was, I should say, when we were with OSF doing security. That's a zero budget. Clothing reimbursement, I plan on the same with the dues, education, and seminar. Office supplies being standard with the same. Operating supplies, the same. Repairs and maintenance, we've had a little bit of a battle with this, even though I'm going to budget the same. That's the one line item that sometimes I struggle with because as our squads age, we go through a lot of repairs and whatnot that we try to utilize the city garage when possible, but unfortunately, we've been outsourcing quite a bit. So there's been a lot of payment and cost and associated with that, and I think I've addressed that with the council previously. As far as, you know, telephone, internet, the postage I did reduce. You know, that's kind of sometimes we have a lot of certified mail, sometimes we don't. So I was able to reduce that by a couple $100. The fuel, I did reduce $3,000 conservatively because I do think that we can and we try to make sure that the officers are utilizing their fuel consumption a little better. But we're kind of at that same battle with NCAT and the fuel. It's a varying item, and unfortunately, we also struggle with dictating on what the price is for, our fuel providers. Publishing is zero, miscellaneous, all those other items, I've requested the same as last year. I did increase the equipment line item because of the cost of the squad cars and the increase in the equipment that we had to change out. The new squads, the new models, I should say, the cages and other items have to be replaced because they changed the actual structure of the inside of the rear, which caused us to not be able to use or utilize and repurpose the existing squad car things. Now, the two that we replaced last year, if we were to switch those out, they'll be the same style or model year, I should say, as the current ones that we would be purchasing. Total, my budget is actually reduced by $147,975. So, like I said, basically I've titled out everything, even with the replacement of an ID maker for the equipment that we have, when we use the ID maker to make all the city IDs for the employees and staff. Any questions on that?
Yeah, just one question.
Sure.
Where are we at on the cameras? Does everybody have cameras, or are we?
All our squad, so later on in the drug fund portion of it, I have budgeted between that and the DUI fund
Okay.
in the event that we were to purchase the body cameras. The quote we received for a cloud version, kind of skipping ahead, is roughly $88,000. So that's something that the mayor and I talked to the representative about, possibly some type of grant. The grants are only for equipment, and the cost really is in the storage and maintenance. So unfortunately, that's all web-based. It would tie into our cameras that are in the squads and unify them to where you'd actually have 4 cameras, because we currently have 3 in the squads, and give us a full picture or a better picture. It is something that I think we need to move to. It's just trying to do it in phases to where it's economical and it doesn't impact, the taxpayers too much. But that is in the drug fund budget. The next is obviously, this is the drug fund. So I guess I could have skipped down to that. I requested all the same line items except the equipment one. And that's where I placed in the purchase for the cameras themselves, for the body cameras and redaction software. That in conjunction with the DUI fund that's later on down. So I did increase that budget by $59,000. The revenue increase for that, because of the cannabis use tax, as well as some seizure money that would be coming back from the state, will make that fund flush. In recent years, we have utilized that for radio equipment, digital equipment that we switched over, which put it in the negative, but this, I think the upcoming deposits will definitely put it in the plus. Is there any questions on that? Let's see. The next line item would be the federal drug fund. This is a fund that we never use. We never utilize. It stays there, and we actually just get the interest off it, only because of the restricted use of it and the reporting factors that go into it. We also don't at this time, even though we have a state or a federal number in case there was a major federal seizure that took place. We would get proceeds from it, or could potentially get proceeds from it. However, we don't utilize this fund at all at this point. The drug lab, it's very similar. We used to do our own cannabis identification, or marijuana leaf identification is what the lab was initially set up for, and there was fines that were associated based on charges through the court process. That is actually just, it sits there in case that in the event that we were ever to reestablish the lab, but we no longer use that either. Some of these funds are actually restricted and prohibited in what can be used. So that's why we want to make sure that, that money remains there and stays in that purpose. And the last is the DUI funds. I've requested the same budget, really that $25,000, but we replaced our intoximeter, which is our breathalyzer machine. We also replaced PBTs. We can utilize that for cameras, which is also the supplemental fund that I'll be using in conjunction with the drug fund if we move towards the body cameras. And then I should have provided you guys the documentation for the back for a lot of the quotes, the contractual items, but overall, like I said, I try to go through there as best as I possibly can to make sure that we're not add in anything because again, at the end of the day, it's all the same general corporate fund, so. And I do talk quick even with a mask on, so.
Does anybody have any questions for Brent?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, starting off with administrative in the fire department, we did see a reduction because based on the contract that I signed last year, all my potential time for sick time was bought out last year. So if I retired next year, there won't be a buyout for anything. My final number is my final number without any buyout numbers. For other, which is employees, it's 134,370. We've seen several of our employees retire, so our actual wages should go down slightly, just replacing older employees with younger ones. This past year, it's also been difficult for us to maintain staffing in our minimum 7. We're still running short as of today. After the police and fire today, they did approve to hire the last person that's on our list. So hopefully, Academy starts March 1st. We'll be back up to our full complement sometime in April this year. Overtime did go up. It's 364,760. Okay, this is an average of the last 2 years. COVID was hard on us as far as the overtime, but it's also an average of the last few years, and it's a more realistic number than picking out 275,000, which hasn't been a good number. Okay, special duty was reduced to 110,644. Special duty is transfers. Transfer numbers have been down, so I reduced that number. Clothing's the same. Educational, we reduced by about $2,000. That fund this year has a surplus. Again, because of COVID, there weren't any classes for the firefighters to really go anywhere.
Will they have to make them up this year then, or?
Well, our in-house training is all up and our numbers are good, but if we're going for outside classes, no. But I do anticipate between now and we just got the date of July 27th for promotional exams. As things open up, I anticipate firefighters jumping on classes because it's a promotional year. So that's there you take all your classes.
Chief, how did you arrive at your special duty number?
What I did with the special duty is I took the reduction in transfers we've had from 17, or I took 17, 18, 19, and 20, how many transfers we ran, and came up with an average of 706 transfers per year. And then I looked at what the percentage was in the reduction of transfers for the last 2 years. 1 year was 60%, 1 year was 53%. So I multiplied 56.5 times 706, and I came up with 398 transfers. And on an average, we get $278 per transfer.
Well, that basically is not even really covering costs of an ambulance.
To pay for an ambulance in 1 year, no. But I've got a little bit more on ambulances as we get further down to equipment also. Public education remained the same, office supplies remained the same. Operating supplies, we went up to 11,500. Vehicle air equipment for routine maintenance maintained at 1,500. Our repairs and maintenance for equipment, we went up to 12,000. We do have some aging equipment. We're going to be looking at replacing all our SCBAs in the next 2 years. That's going to be between 250 and 300,000. We're going to have to be looking for grants on that one. Repairs and maintenance for vehicles, I maintain $90,000. We still have not paid Pierce. We have one vehicle that Pierce still needs to fix. I'm waiting on a date on it. They're telling me it's going to be sometime in May, which will carry it over to the following year. So, and that's about a $37,000 bill.
We haven't paid them for anything yet?
No, until all the vehicles are done. Part of the settlement was we don't pay them for anything. Telephone and internet went up slightly. More technology, we have to put a few extra things in. Postage remained the same. Gas and diesel is everybody's guess. I reduced it by a third. If we're not doing transfers, that really lowers our number and our need for fuel. Miscellaneous remained the same. Miscellaneous ambulance billing, I did reduce, or miscellaneous ambulance, those are for our ambulance supplies. We went down to 49,750 and we requested 53,000 last year. Some of the new software we have is really helping out a lot as far as us anticipating what type of supplies we'll need, and we can buy in a little larger quantities. So that is working out. It's not a big savings, but it's a savings regardless. Ambulance billing is 120,000, which is 20,000 down from last year. In all reality, that's a number you don't want to see go down because that's an indicator of what we're generating for revenue and what we have to pay Northern Illinois Ambulance.
Well, didn't you sign a new contract with them that was less?
To my knowledge, since I've been chief, I don't recall signing a new agreement with Northern Illinois Ambulance billing. 410 went down slightly. Computer services went down because we've got all new computers this year. The big jump is in equipment, where we jumped up to 317,995, and the two big numbers in there, and I didn't address the tower ladder, which still has to be addressed one of these years, is that since we have a new ambulance coming, delivery date sometime in March, we did buy twins the year we bought those. This would be the first one that we would look at rechassis for $150,000. And that would include the power load system, which is coming on the new one, which should help with some of the shoulder injuries. It's basically a shelf that comes out of the back of the ambulance with the cot, so you don't have to lift. Now, to buy that unit independently is approximately $25,000. That would be included in that $150,000. Basically, we would get a new chassis and they would redo the entire box. So we just spent $153,000 or $253,000 on a new ambulance. To get it rechassied is $150,000. It's over $100,000 savings moving forward to do that. And then this would be the replacement of the two ambulances, the two initial Osage ambulances we bought at the same time. The other one is that Car 2, which is the Suburban that we purchased in 2006, to replace that vehicle. We're right at $59,000 for that. But it is a 2006 Suburban that we're still using. We started having some problems here recently. We thought we blew a head gasket altogether, and we were able to actually get it fixed for $500. So we kind of got lucky on that one. Other than that, the loan went from $40,347 to $87,159 as a result of the purchase for the new ambulance that'll be coming shortly. And the interest is $8,816 for a grand total for a budget of next year of $3,887,590, which is $119,000 less than this year. So I mean, we're doing the best we can to be fiscally responsible as possible, not knowing what's going to happen with the results of the past year with COVID going forward with the budget.
Okay, just got one question.
Mhm.
On the overtime.
Okay.
Okay. I can remember back when we thought 275, 250 was a lot of overtime.
Mhm.
Okay. Now we're 100,000 plus over that. Okay. Plus since then we went to this here 48 on or
4896.
yeah, 4896 deal that was supposed to save us overtime, which doesn't really look like it's saving us any overtime.
At this point, I would say no, we would be even on the overtime.
Right, and how many people have we got off of shoulder injuries because we don't have that apparatus in the vehicle?
We have 2 off with slap tears right now that won't be back till summer.
For a while, quite a while.
Yes,
And so that's costing us overtime money there.
correct. So that's why the new ambulance will have that, and going forward,
That's a requirement now, isn't it?
yes. some of the local ambulance providers in the area are actually talking to Stryker, who manufactures that device, and they're trying to go in together and buy multiple units. When you look at retroing one of the existing ambulances for 25,000 or so, and you look at 150,000 to basically get a brand new rig and replace one of the 4 existing we have now. And we bought twins the 1 year. I think it may have been right when Commissioner Les got appointed.
Yeah,
We
well,
bought
Commissioner
two of
Williams
them.
go around.
Right. So this year's the replacement of the first one. And Jeff Newberry had the plan ultimately that if the fleet was all the same, we could go into rechasing them to save money. Well, at this point, we would have 4 of the same vehicles, and that rechasing is actually a reality to start next year going forward.
Well, I'm just kind of looking at the injuries there and, you know, the overtime goes up, without these, and I know, I don't know that much about them, but I do know they help. I've seen them before. I'm just kind of wondering, I mean, the injuries we're getting, one injury.
At this
would pay
point,
for
yes,
that.
to install 1 unit at 25,000,
Yeah.
it looks like you're money ahead as far as if it would
Right.
stop one of those injuries.
We actually need 3 or 4 of them, or 3 more, right?
To have all the vehicles set up it would be outside of the new rig, 75,000 to do the other 3.
To do the other 3.
Correct.
And when are we looking at replacing the next vehicle?
Well, on the budget, I did put it in 150 for next year. So next year would be redoing one of the others. So both frontline ambulances would be with the power lift in them. The other one is a reserve, or one would be for transfers, one would be a reserve. Transfer numbers have been down, so it's not as high a priority for me, other than the 2 frontline rigs that serve the public in the city 911 every
Right.
day. But we have to have those other rigs because it seems we're catching more and more cluster calls where we're getting 3 and 4 calls at the same time that people need to be transported to the hospital. So those additional vehicles are needed.
Wayne, and beyond the fact of injuries that we've sustained too, we haven't had a full force because of retirements, trying to go through our testing, trying to get a new list established for certified and qualified candidates to actually bring in. We've actually had some members that have came in for a short period of time and jumped ship, went to other departments. So every time we lose a staff member, beyond the fact that ones that we do have injuries, we're not fully staffed, that's creating an overtime issue. And obviously this year with COVID, with individuals getting COVID, individuals going in quarantine, there was a lot of overtime called in to cover the shifts, so we had our minimum shift requirements too. So
I'm just looking at next year's 364,000, and that's extreme.
Well, I'd be a proponent of the list. So you say the new ambulance is coming with it?
Yes, it is.
I think we should be seriously, well, you got the next 2, correct, that you said they're the 2 that we bought.
One
JJ
thing,
got after it, I ordered them for Ed.
correct. That
So-
one's being replaced right now, and what I have in my budget is to replace the twin of it
Right.
sometime next year under the budget. And that would be our frontline 2 911 ambulances that are used.
Yeah.
I'm open to those suggestions. I think that's a great idea to put them in all of them. And this is kind of the time that here's my budget request going forward. And, seeing what your thoughts are as far as, we could easily add that to it.
I'm just looking at the idea of the people carrying their shoulders.
I mean,
And it seems to be, from an example of it, people are heavier than they used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago.
but also, Wayne, you gotta consider one thing, the call volume that they're running is so much more than it was.
Right,
years
people
ago.
are older.
Just for example, the year I started, we ran 854 calls, last year was over 4,000.
Well, yeah,
And we've not increased the staff of the fire department, but for 1 per shift back in 1995. So they're running basically with the same staffing as they did when they were running 800 calls, and they're picking up a lot more patients.
well, that's what I'm trying to
The opportunity
say.
for injury is a lot more than it
Right.
was years and years ago.
And that's all I got.
Anything else?
No, I would like to look at adding those lifts though. if
Okay.
possible.
And what I'll do is I will contact the neighboring ambulances because they're trying to go in with 3 or 4 of them at the same time to see if we could reduce the cost if we were to buy, say, 6 or 7 units at the same time with a few different municipalities, maybe bring that cost down a little bit. So, yes, I will get that information for you.
So on our older ones, are there going to be ones that we're going to keep that box?
Well, going forward, they're all going to be the same. All 4
So
are.
once we invest in this lift, we've
Right.
got it.
Correct. We would have it, and it would be one of the things that would be brought over. It would probably be retrofitted to any new changes to it. We're gonna get preventative maintenance on it so that they stay in good working order all the way through. I've been doing that we've got the power lift cots now, which was the first big step that we've got the battery operated cots to go up and down. Now it's a device that actually comes out of the back of the ambulance that takes on all that weight and brings the patient into the back to, you're not lifting as much and stopping one shoulder injury.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
It does. It does. And like I said, I was drawn between, should I budget to change all our existing ambulances or to get both frontline, especially with going with the retro, if it's part of that 150,000 to get that included in there. Now, all of a sudden, we have 2 frontline ambulances, and we're starting that rotation that we need to do to keep the equipment in good order and hopefully bring down our repair costs of
Now,
equipment.
these boxes will last for how many vehicles?
I don't know, we've never done it. I've seen
I know we haven't
2
done
and
it.
3 times
Yeah.
because they're aluminum.
Mhm.
So, and then it would be an improvement upon whatever the new chassis we decided on, where we'll be with all Fords now, but, who's not to say what's gonna come forward, whether
Right.
if Chevy comes up with something new or anything else. They could be switched between manufacturers without a problem.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
We're gonna take a break now till 5:30. I just- It will be. He said he's gonna mute our mics and put up
And
Did
they
they
got,
fix it?
they did, well, I have a big hole in my front yard now,
Oh.
right where we put in new landscaping
Of
last year.
course.
Of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
yeah.
But they did, I mean, he kind of scared me because the night court, they called me at the office and said, you gotta come home. The night court is there. They checked everything. And he said, I think I might be able to tighten it. If I can't, we're gonna have to call the team. Well, 5 minutes later, he said, the team is on the way. But they came like a flatbed truck with a big trencher on
Welcome to
it,
look at it. but-
pulled right into the
Did they
front
call
yard.
Julie?
I don't think they called Julie,
No,
but
they
they put up a
didn't.
lot of flags.
All right, I think we're,
All right.
as soon as Kevin says we're,
530.
Kevin, ready?
I told him we had to wait till exactly 5:30. It's 5:30.
It is 5:30. What, did he turn it on from home?
Yep, we're live. Okay. Yep, office.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a workshop for the city of Ottawa. We did send this notice out publicly to everyone and advise them that if they had any questions or concerns, they could email us ahead of time. We had one person send an email and asked if the meeting could be a Zoom meeting. And we told them that we're going to live stream it, but I think it'd be too hard to do a Zoom meeting at city business. So they will be able to watch it. It'll be on the website if anybody wants to get a recap. And, but anyway, the purpose, if you remember last October or November, we passed an ordinance to address the fact that there was no regulations whatsoever in the city of Ottawa. And basically what we said is you had to have your food handler license, the Department of Public Health license, and you had to have insurance. Shortly after we passed that, the Rotary Club held a food truck rally down at Washington Park. And we asked everybody to comply with the ordinance and to supply all the information that was covered under the new ordinance. So we didn't shut down that event, but I think there was only one vendor that met the requirements. And now one of them we know was owns a restaurant. We know that they have the stuff. For whatever reason, they didn't do it. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to enforce more. And we've done it. There's already been a couple food trucks in the city so far this year. And both of them, we made sure that they sent us all the appropriate documentation to verify that they do have everything to meet our ordinance. We are going to modify it. We inadvertently, we didn't ask for the insurance certificate, and mostly all of our other contractor registration or anything, we always ask for that. So when we amend the ordinance, we'll add that to it. So they'll have to send the 3 documents. So at that time, we didn't address whether or not there would be a fee. Most other cities do have a fee, and most of them do have some type of restrictions on where they locate. We're not making a recommendation. We're here to get feedback from all of you. I know some of the brick and mortar stores want just an outright ban. We can't do that legally, but we can restrict where they locate. And there was a memo that Christina put out last year. Like LaSalle charges $600 for a license. They don't allow any food trucks in the downtown business, but you do have to get a permit. And they allow them for block parties and anywhere outside of downtown as long as they have an agreement with the brick and mortar store for up to 12 times a year. Then Peoria, we talked about at the last hearing, they've got one, but for the downtown business area, they charge $3,400 for a license. So I think they're pretty much saying that they don't want them there. Champaign has designated areas. And they charge $300. Joliet only permits food trucks at special events, not otherwise permitted. Evanston has designated areas. Streeter, I want to concentrate mainly on LaSalle and Streeter because they're our neighbors. So Streeter's licenses are valid between 9 and 6, Labor Day to Memorial Day, and 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. from Memorial Day to Labor Day. But they do have a clarification that no one can conduct any other vending of any type or character from a mobile unit upon the street or public property within the city. I don't know how to interpret that, but they charge $200. So based on the attorney's recommendation last year for this workshop, we want to talk about what restrictions we want to put on locations. And then on us would be, you know, who's going to regulate it, who's going to enforce it, and then where the food trucks would be located. If you remember, we had a map printed up, and I have it over here on the corner. A lot of the cities restrict it in the downtown area, so we have a map that shows everything in red is the C4 district, which is downtown. And then the city of Chicago had been sued and it went to the Supreme Court. They had a rule that you couldn't be 200 feet, within 200 feet of an existing restaurant. The Supreme Court ruled that that was not a violation of the Constitution. And I read that case today, and part of the argument on that, though, is they didn't ban the food trucks. They designated areas where the food trucks could operate, and none of them are within the 200 foot of the thing. So the Supreme Court did say that 200 was okay. There's other places in the country where, California, for example, their Supreme Court ruled that can't have any restrictions, but. So with that, I'll open it up for anyone from the public to comment or for that matter, anybody on the council.
I can go first. I mean, my point of view, you know, I fully
Okay,
support.
excuse me, I'm sorry. One thing I forgot is we are streaming this live. If you could come up to the microphone, please. The last time when we did this, we had people around the table and trying to pass a microphone, and it didn't work. And the people watching from home or that want to watch it after today won't be able to hear you unless you're using one of the microphones.
So I need you to state your name first for the record.
Chad Lucas.
Thanks.
So, you know, my point of view is pretty clear on this. I do fully support food trucks. I'm a part of a 4th of July committee in Streeter that we've been very successful, and I feel like part of the reason we've been extremely successful with our event was because of the food trucks that we brought in from all around the area. Okay. Now, with that being said, you know, that was more from a festival standpoint. Food trucks serve a purpose. I think a lot of that purpose has to do with specific events. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't deserve to function in a world outside of events. I just think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to certain restrictions. And I think I speak for most of the business owners when it comes to those that have invested a lot of time and money into our downtown brick and mortar locations to attract the tourists to those spots, to spend $100,000+ into our kitchen to serve these people, not only on the Friday and Saturday nights, but on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday lunches. We don't get to pick and choose when we serve people. We don't get to pick and choose when we provide for our employees and the jobs that we provide. At the end of the day, I think you guys are on the right track when it says no C4 district, period, downtown, completely exclude it, and then pick a linear footage from or diameter from a local restaurant that has invested in a kitchen. I think both of those are extremely necessary because if you do just do the 200 feet, it will allow for loopholes in the downtown for people to fit their way in. At the end of the day, if you want to be a restaurant, invest in a kitchen. I mean, it's kind of a slap in the face of those that have invested that time and money into bettering the downtown to let a food truck pull up in front of the business and have it aid both businesses, especially when those food trucks are not from our town. You know, so they take advantage of those peak times that all of us rely on to make up for those slow times on the Tuesdays and the Wednesdays and Thursdays. So that's all I got to say about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Anyone else?
How you doing? Nate from Cat's Eye Wine Bar. So I'm all for the food trucks as well. Obviously, restricting them is important in terms of what they have, their licenses, their insurance. If we bring a food truck out, we don't want to have somebody not accustomed to following health code regulations. That's important to us. I think sometimes the misconception with having a food truck downtown is, especially for a place like us that doesn't have a kitchen, simply because we just don't have room for a kitchen. We do small plates, charcuterie. It's an opportunity to bring in a different clientele to our downtown. I can count on one hand how many people came into the bar with a pretzel or flows. There were 3. I'm not doing it to bring people into my bar. If they so happen to come inside, fantastic. My thought is it's a way to bring a different clientele, maybe who's a Flows fan, who's a fan of Dittos, who's a fan of Dig Dugs, to the downtown. Then they shop. Then they go have an appetizer or an entree somewhere else because a pretzel isn't an entree. Let's face it. That's like a starter. Let's get downtown, let's shop, then let's go grab a beer down here, let's grab an entree at Tangled Roots, whatever. Restricting it to, the one concern I have is restricting it to these off kind of side streets. I'd like there to be a little more leniency as to where they could be in terms of the downtown, and I don't want to shove a food truck in front of, you know, I don't think having one right next to Tangled Roots is a great idea, but I know Tangled Roots supports when we have food trucks, and they like when the food trucks come because people come in Tangled Roots and get beer. So yeah, I guess just maybe kind of brainstorming a little bit on where they could be located would help. But yeah, my number one concern too is in having dealing with the food trucks is they seem to not be clear on what they need in order to operate. And there seems to be kind of a flippancy with the food trucks, like, well, we'll just throw you some paperwork, and it's never correct. So then I have to become their spokesperson, which I don't want to be. I don't work for the food truck. It's an opportunity to bring them out, but I don't want to have to like become their vocal kind of representative with you guys, because I know you're busy and you don't need me calling you trying to figure out what documentation. So I think having a clear cut, this is what you need. If you don't have it, you can't come.
Going forward, one of the things we're going to do is when we register them, they'll do that at the first of the year. They'll be registered for the year, and they'll submit all that stuff one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then all they have to do is tell us what day they're coming in. And then what we're thinking is if, you know, if we have designated areas, you know, that we'll just put on when they're coming and what area they want, and then we can block off so many spaces.
Right, but every person that hands a piece of food out of that truck has to have a food handler license.
Right.
Okay, not a sanitation license. Sanitation license mainly for the kitchen.
Mhm.
They should have one of them there too.
Right.
But the person has to have food. You can't ask that a year ahead of time.
Right.
Because you don't know who's going to be working in them food trucks.
Yeah.
They can put anybody they want in the food truck at any time.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
I know these guys over here have to have, their people have
Right.
to have food handler license.
yeah, we do too. Like just based on the small plates that we serve, even for that, we have to have,
Right.
we have to have actually,
Even if you're serving cheese and crackers.
right, I gotta have, for meat and cheese boards, because I'm handling it, I gotta have it.
Even
Um,
put an olive in a drink, you gotta have another
Right,
license. for-
gotta have my Bassett license. And I think too, I think there should be, I agree that there should be some kind of yearly fee. Because Chad's right, if he's got a brick and mortar, how fair is it that someone can come into town and just, oh, I'm here for free? And he's got to invest what he invests in his place, and someone can just roll into town and go, well, I'm going to serve entrees for nothing. I think there should be, it's fair that they have to pay some kind of yearly fee. And personally, I think some places do like $150. I think that's pretty, I think it should be a little more, to be honest. I mean, make it, people who are serious about doing it, you know, make it a significant yearly fee and a fair fee, I think, too. So, but that's just where I stand on it.
Thanks. Anyone else? Council? Okay.
I mean, I have to agree that I think there needs to be an annual fee, and I'm not exactly sure what that annual fee is, but it should be maybe $200-300.
I was suggesting 200. And then based on Christina's email, we have some other licenses, like for the street peddler, the vendor. and
Right.
They're all over the board. One of them's $400. What I would like to do is just put everything at 200. That should give us enough to cover the administration to do it. And I talked with Matt today about, we're hoping to streamline this to make it website based like our electrical license. When we do that, the contractor license, that if somebody from Wisconsin was coming down, they should be able to log in to our website, click on it, fill out all the stuff. And if they leave something out, it's not gonna let them.
Somebody coming from Wisconsin isn't gonna have a state of Illinois food license to have it.
Well, he'll have to get one, won't he, Wayne?
Yeah.
I don't know as if I'm should say I'm not in favor of a total ban in the C4 district, though. And I'm not sure if I agree with the 200 foot.
I'm not proposing that.
No, I
That's
know.
just
I'm
what we
just-
sent out.
Right, I'm just saying that.
A lot of communities restrict it downtown, and 200 is the one that was challenged in.
Right, and I'm just giving my opinion. I would favor more of a distance from a brick and mortar space, though. I don't think a food truck should be parking out in front of Monty's or JJ's or a Court Street for sure. I mean, you know, I think there should be a distance from their front door. Maybe that's 100 foot, I don't know, unless they have permission of that restaurant. I mean, I could see where maybe a restaurant would want to bring in a smoke food truck for one night, have a special or something like that. And then they need their permission to do that, but, or we have designated areas for the food trucks to locate, which I wouldn't have an issue with that either, but, just outright ban from the downtown area, I can't agree with that.
Well, I also threw out the idea of possibly designating spots around Washington Park or the Jordan Block. I think when we did Kris Kringle, we proved that having people 3 blocks apart didn't really hurt anything. People who walk that distance back and forth. But that was just a thought. Yeah.
I just thought of something too. I don't even know if there's a way to do this, but. My thinking when we have had food trucks, and I don't know if there's a way to restrict this. We try to be mindful. I don't want to have anything that is similar downtown. I'm not going to have tacos. I'm not going to have burgers. I'm trying to have something that like you guys don't carry, Tangle Roots doesn't carry. You know, that's what I try to stay mindful of.
But two of these places, one, you just mentioned Tangle Roots, and you just mentioned over there at Court Street.
Right.
That's some of the best pretzels in the world.
Sure.
You brought a pretzel truck right down in front of your place.
Right. But was that pretzel truck taking away from Tangle Roots' business that day? I highly doubt that.
You don't.
I would assume no. Because if I'm going for a pretzel, let's say I'm going to Tangle Roots. I'm going to Tangle Roots for a burger, and then, oh, they have a pretzel on the menu. Great, let me get a pretzel. I'm not like, hey guys, let's all take a party of 6 down to Tangle Roots and get a pretzel. I highly doubt that's going to happen. If anything, and we know this for a fact, and you can ask him, when I had the pretzel truck, Scott Struchin messaged me and said, hey, do you want to send me a post of your food truck? I'd like to share it. Now that's Scott Struchin. I highly doubt he cared that we had a pretzel truck. Again, I try to be mindful not to have the significant menu item. I don't think the pretzel is Tangled Roots' significant menu item. I would argue that's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't.
I got a good question. So if this food truck coming
No.
to-
Nobody can hear you, Chad. I'm sorry. Nobody's gonna be able to hear you.
Oh yeah, here you can.
No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
This food truck brings no benefit, zero benefit, nobody comes. The fact that bring flows, bring people, sell people are coming to this town no matter what, from deep, whatever, those, that crowd's already coming. So it truly brings no positive impact to that specific business who happens to not have a kitchen. What's the reason to do it? You know, for example,
Yeah.
Barrel Society in Princeton, great business. Seems like you guys might be trying to mimic it a little bit. They bring food trucks there because they do not offer food. Well, I get customers to stay to engage in my business by having food sit in front of my business.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I do it for my benefit.
Mhm.
I don't go through the hassle of me scheduling a food truck, dealing with food trucks licenses. And
Sure.
I don't waste, we only have a finite amount of time in the day. I don't have time to spend on something that's truly not even helping me. So the question is why? It is not, nobody's rushing to get a food truck from Flows, they can just drive to Flows.
Yeah. Number one, the effort is very minimal. 20 minutes or so of my time. Number two, we've had food trucks probably since last year. So in terms of mimicking anyone, I'm just trying to continue what we were doing from last year, which is collaborating with another business who is not like, hopefully, anything downtown. Bring exposure to the downtown is kind of what I'm thinking. It costs nothing for me, so no effort, no cost. Brings visibility to the downtown. Maybe bring some people to your business. Maybe bring some people to Tangle Roots. Hopefully some to mine. I kind of see it as like a collaborative, small business kind of joining together to bring exposure to Ottawa. If it bring, yeah, go ahead. Sure, sure. Mm. Yeah.
They do not have to be sponsored by a business that has
Right.
a kitchen. All of a sudden, what happens is the popular food trucks in the area say, man, I was really doing some good stuff. Their downtown is packed on the weekends.
Mhm.
Why don't I pull into a city street parking spot? Since I don't need to be sponsored by an existing restaurant, I can really do as I please. So and I don't want to, that's what I want to clarify.
Yeah.
This isn't about you guys at all. So I don't want
Right.
to take it the wrong way. This is about what would happen if we don't take that in, because Ottawa is growing and booming on an exponential level because of what people have done to grow this town collectively. The government, the building owners, what they've helped us with building our businesses. So it's not about that person, it's just about, we gotta nip this in the bud before we look back a couple of years from now, I'm like, man, this really got out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I can see what you're saying is like, if anyone can come out and just park anywhere they want without any kind of sponsorship from like, say I've agreed to have whoever, was it Bertha's, I forget the empanada spot. Say I agree to have them come out if there is no agreement and you just get out of hand with food trucks parking everywhere they want to park and they're parking in front of your place, the JJ's, all of a sudden they're out by Monty's, that's a problem, obviously. Like then it becomes like a free for all. But yeah, no, you know what I'm saying. Like you just don't want it to become a free for all, which I can see what you're saying. That would be my concern too if I had like what you guys have. Having been someone who's worked in a restaurant for a long time, I would hate that what I put into my place is almost becoming not irrelevant, but kind of someone coming into town and just parking without any kind of consequence or I guess rules is a problem.
Well, and that's,
But, you know, that's the exact reason we're here tonight. We don't want a food truck every weekend parked in every corner.
Right.
So we have to have some
But the
kind of
other-
regulation for them.
the other thing I want to clarify too, on behalf of Nate, he's called me a number of times and not complaining about anything, just asking if these people have everything in place. And the last one was Flo's because they didn't have their paperwork. So, I mean, they're trying to at least follow what rules we have. So it wasn't that he was advocating one way or the other, it's just I want to follow the rules. And then I would have him tell the food truck if they need to help parking, call the police department. So I think we just need to concentrate on what's fair.
I mean, I think to speak to Tom's point, you know, I hate that word outright ban. That sounds like you're talking the whole city. Well, we're
You
not.
can't do that.
You know, exactly. That is not even a question. I never even thought about that. The initial letter sent out way back was not thought into enough because we didn't think it was going to turn into something like this. Shame on us. The footage away from a business makes a lot of sense. It has to be reasonable. And it's unfortunate that businesses utilizing food trucks happen to be right next door to one that we cannot control. It's just at the end of the day, this downtown has become something really special. And I agree for areas, George, you want to throw them like in the park area or Thornton Park's another one and let them stand alone. By all means, again, our 4th of July in Streeter took off and it became easier from our standpoint because of food trucks. You could no longer ask for buy-in from the businesses because they were doing us a favor. We're like, hey, let's bring the city something special. How do you bring the city something special? I mean, food trucks serve an amazing purpose for that. But it becomes not so special when it happens every weekend. Now I went from like, man, this is an awesome event. Like when they had the Rotary event, people were like, do you oppose that? I'm like, hell no, that's one of the greatest events we could have to bring people to this area if properly planned. But those events lose their luster if it's an every weekend thing.
I agree. I mean, maybe the license also only permits the food truck to operate X number of times in town.
Sal has theirs 12 times a year.
Yeah.
You're gonna charge a fee one time, correct?
$200.
For the whole year?
Well,
Annual fee.
if that's what I threw out there as a number, I don't think it's lower than a lot of the other cities. But I mean, we will have to, create some type of an app and get an application and get stuff in and then manage that. And then enforce it if somebody comes in and they don't have that. But
When you're doing this too, I maybe look at public safety, when you're going down, I know it's IDOT, when you're going down 23, you got trucks and trailers parked backwards. I don't think that's in the best safety of the public. You're dealing with propane and everything like that too. So you do have some safety issues when you put food trucks in front of businesses. If there is an accident, there's going to be some tragedy.
yeah, and the fire chief also weighed in on,
You can Google that and look up.
Yeah.
Food trucks blow up.
Yep.
I would certainly look at that when we're weighing all of our options here.
so Everybody on it, does 200 sound like a reasonable?
I said 200 to 300. I mean, 200 is the low end, for me, but yeah.
I like Peoria's.
I think 200 is fine, and we could always change it.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think we need to like outprice them out of the market and make it, oh, I don't want to go to Ottawa because it's so expensive. You get the proper restrictions in place with this. Now, I think it's the linear footage diameter away from a restaurant. You know, a certain little downtown, not downtown district doesn't mean it has to go, you know, all the way past the park. It could just mean, it's, the only reason I see with the downtown area is just preventing little loopholes, right? You know, it's like, you're still downtown at the end of the day. We don't want a bunch of businesses, you know, drawing circles of 200 square foot around every single restaurant, and be like, boom, there's our hot spot, let's all go there, there's our food truck area. You know, designated places like a park, for sure, you know, it's, I think at the end of the day, we'll sit here and we'll be talking about the same thing in another hour and a half, and it's just keep them a distance away from the brick and mortar. Yeah, I got 3 kids and 1 in the belly, so I got, like, clothes will be in the yard from here out.
So I don't know if you guys can be able to see this. So in addition to Cat's Eye, I'm gonna fix my mic. In addition to Cat's Eye, I know that Amanda Wagon at Open Spaces would have a food truck down, I think, once a month. And so if we restricted everything in C4, I mean, pretty much you couldn't have one anywhere. And then when there's yellow, where the yellow circles are, Tom put that on there. That's the 200-foot rule that Chicago uses. Well, you might as well say you can't even be close to downtown. So I think we got to come up with something that's reasonable and try to help both sides.
Maybe if we're not at the point where we're ready or know the answer and a good response from everybody that, hey, you can't go here because of this, you're restricted here, this or that. Maybe we look at it from a different perspective and actually identify some places where we will allow you to go, and maybe take that approach first.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
If we don't have the answer to how, you know, if we are going to place restrictions on, you know, whether it's not in the district, by invitation only, not next to this business, not next, but I actually identify an area, for example, Washington Square. You're permitted to operate on Washington Square between these hours, on these streets, in these places. You know, here's the application process. Again, $200 fee. The Jordan Block, you're permitted to operate here during these days here. Well, I think Allen Park would be a fantastic place in the summertime for a food truck. If somebody took a food truck down to Allen Park in the summertime, they'd probably sell out by lunchtime. Fox River Park would probably be another good one too. I think a lot of our parks, you know, one of the gentlemen here from another organization, you know, I don't know if it would be such a good thing in competition with a concession stand.
No, I think it would actually hurt the organization, these organizations, much like they're talking about.
Exactly.
Oh, I know it would.
So, and we battled with that.
And a lot of times, you know, some of the youth organizations, they do have their concession stands. They're trying to generate revenue off it. I think, you know, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to allow them at those areas, especially when they're having tournaments or anything else. Restrict them in some of our public property and look a little bit further in depth on what we could do for restrictions on where they can't go. But I think giving them a space where they can go and say, you can go there, opens it up, and maybe that solves a little bit of the problem in the first place.
And again, at the end of the day, they're going to be subject to seasonality just like any other business. So for example, you know, in the winter, there's less people going out, there's less people going around. That's where, you know, downtown businesses, restaurants are having the hardest time. So yes, if one of your main spots is Allen Park and the different parks around town, where there aren't obviously that many people running around in the summer. It's seasonal just like anything else. So I couldn't agree with that more. I want it to be a part of it. I mean, I enjoy food trucks. I want a food truck someday. You know, but it's one of those things where it's, you know, again, from my standpoint, you know, if I'm parked right next to an existing business, I can see whether it is directly affecting them or not. This business is thinking, well, man, that's $500 with really low overhead. My building cost me a solid $1. It kind of upsets me a little bit, you know, and I'm not talking about me personally, but I'm just saying, I can see where that could be, you know, misconstrued. Hey, I'm not mad at you personally, but it's tough to see, you know, a line of 50 people at that door and my business is still empty, especially during times like the COVID. I mean, we're just getting out of all that fun stuff. And I saw the tale of both worlds where, you know, my office wasn't all that affected, but the restaurants were decimated. I mean, to a exponential degree. I don't even understand how some of these people are still hanging on without supplementary income. So, yeah, I think it's good. I think you guys just kind of hash it out, and I think you're on the right track.
Thanks, Chad.
What about, are you guys okay with doing that? Allen Park, Thornton Park, Washington Park, Jordan Block?
I would be hesitant on Washington Square, Washington Park. Okay, because you're right in between Ashland and Buffalo. I mean, you're looking. Plus, if they do that front in the Woolworths building, that's going to be restaurants.
Well, we could always change it too.
Yeah, I understand that.
I don't have an issue with the parks at all, but I also think that there should be some opportunity along LaSalle Street also.
Well, what I was gonna suggest is, so if we allow those 4 parks we're talking about, you don't need to be sponsored by anybody. That could just be a food truck that decides he wants to come and sell his stuff. We designate where the spot is. But similar to what LaSalle, if we took the C4 district and said that they have to be sponsored by a brick and mortar business and limit the number of times per year.
Tom, what do you think from your standpoint? Why does an out-of-town food truck have the right to be on the South Street? The hottest, you know, South Columbus? What makes them, hey, you're out of town, you should come and share in the love? Even if you don't live here, you don't do anything in this town, you don't sponsor teams, you don't work in parades, you don't do any of this stuff.
Do you think you're getting sales tax, Joel?
I'm not sure where they pay their sales tax.
They don't.
Well, we don't know that.
Yeah, you don't know that either, Brad. They're required to pay sales tax. I know that, but I'm not sure where they have to pay it. I don't know if they pay that where they actually live, where their business is registered, or if they're supposed to pay it at each individual community they go to. I don't know the rules on that.
Well, the people that were down at the Washington Park one, Heidi tracked them and they all had to submit what their sales were and what they were going to report to the state for sales tax. So we tried to find out if we got the sales tax, and everybody working for the state is working remotely, so they can't give us the answer. But from what the indication we got from Heidi monitoring it, that they indicated that, yeah, they were paying it.
You started to ask a question.
Well,
Besides
it
the
sounds
parks.
like we're in agreement on the 200. Maybe agreeing to the parks. Wayne had an exception on,
Washington Park.
which
I would agree with Wayne, you're too close to Bash.
I can't imagine anybody debating, and I've had this discussion with you too, Brad, whether I'm going to go to Bash or Monty's or go to the food truck.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm all wet. I don't see the food trucks as really competition for you guys. I really don't. I don't think the people that are going to go to the food truck are going to walk into JJ's or Monty's or the Court Street and sit there for, come in for one sandwich and leave like they do with a food truck. They're going to come into your place. They're going to sit down for a little while. They're going to have a couple drinks. They're going to have their meal. I really don't see them as a competition. I could be totally wrong. I don't think I
But
am.
at the end of the day, you know, you're never gonna be able to fully track where the revenues went. Hence why a lot of the other towns, Streeter being one of them, right, actually said, hey, just go downtown business, just go wherever you want, so downtown businesses. Hey, we don't know if it's directly affecting your business or not, or Grotto, or Court Street, or JJ's, or whatever, but just in case it might, we're gonna protect our own that are paying the property taxes, paying our employees, paying our employer taxes, et cetera. And we're gonna just take 200 feet. You know, and it's not, that's why I hate the word bank. It's like, go to 200 feet, you know, from a business, simple as that. It's only 1/25 of a mile. 100 feet is just like, well, you can throw a baseball that far. But it's just one of those things where I don't know if it's directly impacting them or them, but I know these are my people, my businesses, and, you know, why am I gonna let anybody else come in from out of town and jeopardize that? You know, because it's, I don't know, businesses, you got a few of them downtown specifically, and I know, who knows if they'll make it through the year. You know, why should they have to go through that and watch this business park right next to them in an art gallery? I don't know if they're even gonna make it. You know, it's not only was, man, my business, really, my city didn't have my back, kind of a slap in the face. Whether it would have affected me or not, we'll never know. Nor, you know, unless you got some forensic investigator, you will never know. But I want to protect, just what it could turn into. Again, it had nothing to do with anybody specifically, but Ottawa is only going to become a bigger thing. I mean, and everybody is doing, all of you guys included, are doing a phenomenal job of making damn sure of that. So why do we want to invite everybody, you know, LaSalle people, or I don't know where the hell's Flo's at. Those people aren't coming here to eat Flo's. They're eating Flo's when it's 1 minute away from them. They're leaving their own house just to hit Flo's and go back home. They're not coming here because, oh, they got Flo's. I got to leave my hometown where I eat it every day and come here. So I think we're thinking just too specific about it. It's a much higher level thing that I just don't think we want to let it get out of hand. 200 feet from businesses, OC4, or wherever else you want, stand alone in a park. I'll eat that food truck every damn time it's in Allen Park. Every time I go to Menards, whether I'm hungry or not, that burrito truck is sitting there, I eat that thing every single time. So, believe me, I will support them till the end, but it's, you gotta show faith. When the city shut down all of the streets and said, hey, here's your barricades, here's your picnic tables, and then we watched in other cities that we're not even heard of, all the Ottawa businesses were like, damn, my city has my back. And when we're sitting here with businesses in the other cities like, hey, you gonna talk about this or act like it's not a thing? Those are the type of things that give confidence to people to continue to buy buildings in this downtown, an overinflated real estate market, but we're trusting that it's only going up from here. So.
Yes.
My name is Francie Scoblake, and I'm in Cat 5 Wine Bar, but we also own a retail business. And I don't know if this is exactly comparing apples to oranges, but there's a lot of festivals here, and especially the Kris Kringle Festival. You know, we're going to have maybe arts festival here. The Lobster and Wine Fest, and every time we have a festival, and there's quite a few, we invite all different kinds of vendors who sell things. The exact same things that I have in my store, 90% of it. I love it when they bring other vendors, even though they're selling what I'm selling, because that Kris Kringle market saved our butts this Christmas. And they could buy candles from me, they could buy jewelry from me. A lot of them went there and bought it, gloves, hats, whatever it was they were selling. A lot of them trickled in to my store. And here's what happened, because, you know, I taught marketing and graphic design at college. It's a great marketing opportunity. People would come in and all they said is, what a wonderful town. They might have bought a 10-cent trinket from me, but they're going to come back. I didn't know this store was here. I didn't know the wine bar was here. I didn't know this was here. I didn't know that was here. We're coming back. So I'm not mad every time we have a festival, and I know it's a little different thing because it is a festival. It's not just a candle vendor coming and parking in front of my store, you know, that probably would be angry, maybe, I don't know. I never had that happen, but there's a lot of festivals and a lot of vendors who, like I said, sell the same exact thing that I sell. But it brings people into town, it makes them aware of who I am, of my business, of our wine bar, and everybody else around here. We had so many people who had never been to Ottawa that said to us, we're coming back. This is a great town. So I think of it as marketing that I don't have to spend any money to do. And they will come into my store. They will come, whether they buy something, you know, from another vendor, they will eventually walk in and buy something. Most of them did. And like I said, there's a lot of festivals. So, you know, every time there's a festival, there's someone around selling the same exact thing that I do. But I just feel it's a win-win situation. I don't mind it at all.
Well, and I could share this sentiment even more. I love festivals. I think they have benefited our town. To answer your question, apples, oranges. Court Street had Chris Kringle Market on there, on our block. I think we had festivals on our block, whatever. I loved it because it was a festival. Talk about the time and the place, festival. Bringing people to town, a overall festival that includes all sorts of different things. Not one food truck. I could, Miss Stacy from Gardens Gate could not have done a better job on Chris Kringle, and I think it's going to be a huge builder for years to come. But apples, oranges, I think that answers that question. It's just not the same. If a business came in front of you selling the same thing you sell every Friday, Saturday night, probably have an issue with that, as you stated.
Well, I would go, and I would agree with Chad on, you know, whether I'm allowed to have a food truck in front of the wine bar, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, to be honest. And like I said, I can literally count on one hand how many people came in. We had our normal business as it was for a Friday, Saturday. It was good business. It would have been great if more people came in, but it didn't happen. And I thought that was gonna happen because we just have the crowd that wasn't gonna do both. So you kind of live and learn from that. And, but I like what Ched did bring up, which is if you're gonna have, whether it's flows or dittos, limit it to 6 times a year they can show up. And make sure that if they are allowed to be in Ottawa, it's a special thing and not just like, we're here every 4 days. Because then it's stale, then it loses its luster, and then it's infringing upon you.
Making some people look forward.
Right.
Kids are like.
And I see where
Yeah,
you're
stop
saying, where it's like, look, I'm
Gotta
with
stop
them, but not
talking out of the
every
microphones. There's no point
every
live
single-
streaming if nobody's gonna come up to the microphone.
Did you imagine how many steps I have in if they had to walk back and forth down it?
Well, anyway, a couple of things I want to mention. And yeah, we were thrilled with Chris Kringle. Actually, Stephanie didn't want to do it on both ends of town. She wanted it all at one end. And the state forced her because of the COVID restrictions. And now she said she'd never do it any other way. It worked fantastic. It helped the downtown merchants, helped the city.
The only sad part was that the restaurants couldn't be open to benefit basically from that because of the COVID, but.
Maybe it's the tables outside, people were willing to freeze.
Right.
I saw that.
I know that.
I saw that.
I think they rolled with the punches on that.
Yeah, they, well, and that was one of the things that in the past, we always had a $5,000 tent that we had to heat with about $1,000 worth of propane. And Stephanie's whole attitude, because now it wasn't the city's, the taxpayers paying that bill, it was going to come out of her. He goes, it's an outdoor event. And it's Christmas time. I mean, you should be expected to be dressed, wear gloves and hats, and you're going outside to shop. And then duck in somewhere to get a coffee or a sandwich. But going forward, I think that we'll do that. I know that the people that want to run the Wine Fest have already reached out and want Stephanie's contact information because they want her to get vendors to come in for the Wine Fest. We're
Willing to split the wine fest that way, where you have things going on both
We want things from Washington Park to Jordan Block. Yes,
Yep.
but everybody realized that helped everybody out. The other thing I was going to mention when Chad was talking about opening up the streets, we got a tremendous amount of compliments from people from other cities. Mayor Harrell and I talk often, and he's still talking about how cool it was to come to Ottawa. He says it was like you were going to some resort town because all the bars were opened up. And one thing that we're looking at doing, we want to make that permanent. There'll be a fee for that, similar to like a patio license. But if somebody wanted to take a couple parking spots in front of their restaurant or bar, or it doesn't have to be a restaurant or bar, it could be the art lady or somebody selling clothes. But we're looking at investing in, instead of using the galvanized crowd barriers that look kind of tacky. I mean, it was fine for the COVID, but we're looking at getting some nice wrought iron barricade type things that the city would come out on request, and Cat's Eye calls and says, you know what, we need 2 parking places we want to break out. We're going to put some chairs and tables out there. We'll go and do that. I mean, it's kind of rough being on LaSalle Street. I don't know if people want to sit that close to the traffic, but I know I met with Chad last week talking about this. What we want to do is we'll invest to make the barricades look nicer, but we'd like to see that the businesses do something nice and make it look like you're at a resort town. You're either in Galena or Lake Geneva, and it's going to be great for everyone. Riverfest, we haven't finalized, but Wayne and I have been talking about, and we spend an awful lot of money to put on the food and beer festival. And we're thinking that rather than doing that, just encourage everybody to go to the bars and the restaurants in town and maybe take a small portion of that budget and just bring bands in, similar to when we do the music in the park, which is mainly geared toward the elderly people. We want to bring bands for old people like me.
We're looking at closing down some of the streets, say like we closed down part of Jefferson Street over by Hughes, and have a band over there, down by Court Street, and move them around, you know, sort of like, so everybody can get in on everything, okay?
And part of the thought process too was that if, like, music in the park is nine Saturdays?
6 to 8.
No, how many times we do
Oh,
it?
9 times.
So you do it 9 times. If we were able to bring a band down, and one time it's in Jordan Block, one time it's in Jackson, one time on Madison Street, and just move it around, the word gets out to our surrounding communities that, you know, hey, let's go to Ottawa on Saturday night. They're going to have live entertainment, and they're going to have a lot of nice bars and restaurants open.
And the businesses are going to be open. I mean, they'll serve food outside on the tables, stuff like that. I mean, even like your wine place there, have your tables outside, people can, you know, can enjoy it. So, I mean, we're looking at making some changes. I mean, we learned it's bad that we have COVID. We had it, or we still got it, but we've learned a lot. And it's just the future is in front of us now. So we've learned a lot over the last year, and I think we can use that to our advantage. It's no different than before. We used to tape this and they play it on Saturday at 12 o'clock meeting. Well, we're actually live right now, and you know, we've learned a lot. So I think that we can really make a big difference. And I mean, people go to Naperville, but a lot of people from Naperville are coming down here now. Okay, so I mean, it makes a big difference. And I just, like Chad said, we got some of the best restaurants in this area. I mean, as far as Ottawa is concerned, you got your choice. So we're just working better for the community. We got to work this here food truck thing out. I mean, right now, the way the food truck deal is, it's not bad, but it could be extremely bad if we don't do something. And that's the whole point. Point is, we got to stay ahead of what's going on.
Right now, we could have 5 food trucks pull into Ottawa tomorrow, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it as long as they've got their licenses. That's why we're talking about, making some restrictions there, because that's what we don't want.
Well, I think that if we do the 200 foot from a restaurant is just way too strict,
I think it is too.
eliminates everything. I'm more inclined to limit the number of times they can come city. And I like the idea if they're sponsored by somebody, especially if they're downtown, then it's not somebody that just pulls up and parks in front of your space. Nate?
And just to kind of go with what Chad's saying about food trucks coming from outside, and I totally see that. Is there a way to have some kind of radius as to where that food truck is located, like only street or in Ottawa, or just so? And again, it's harder for me. Sometimes you're not as conscious until someone brings it up, like, why is a food truck from Brooklyn South allowed to come in? Maybe keep it a little more local if we're gonna, and I don't know how many food trucks are in Ottawa. I know there's.
Yeah, I think you'll be home from nothing.
Yeah, there's only a couple. It's like Dig Dug's, and
It's
it's.
just at the end of the day, it's just about the businesses around. Everybody's is cognizant, is a good neighbor about how they think the next door neighbor feels about what's going on, and I think we'll all move forward together. But,
So
at the end of the day, you guys are the ones making decisions, so I think we got all the information on the table, and you guys talk, and figure stuff out.
So when you say sponsor, that would be like us
Yeah.
inviting, okay.
Rather than somebody just showing up and saying, here, I'm parking there. They gotta have an agreement with somebody that because one of the rules they're supposed to have is they have to have either a restaurant or a restroom on board or an agreement with somebody to use theirs. And that's where I think the sponsor would come in. If you got somebody who say, you know what, you gotta.
Are you talking about limiting the sponsorships then too, so that we don't have the same business that we have? 10 different vendors.
Yeah, I think I'm more so on sponsorship from the business versus the food truck, because, yeah, then if I'm a business, I'm not getting the same food truck, over and over and over again, so it's not like they're coming to town more than 4 times anyways. You get you 1 week, you the next week, you the next week, you the next week, you the next week. The whole idea of this is to prevent 4 of those places from saying, damn, that was a good idea. We all have one every single week, and now we've got 4 food trucks downtown every single week. What you'll also see is, on the flip side of things, is food trucks coming into town and say, hey, can you sponsor me? And businesses are like, oh, I don't see what the hell not, it don't hurt me any, so they just park there because that person's sponsored them, so.
Well, that actually happened because of COVID when they had the restrictions on the bars. Bars couldn't open unless they served food. And there was a lot of bars that reach out to a food truck and say, hey, can you come sit in my parking lot?
Yeah, they're gonna find a loophole no matter what you guys do, so just come up with the best resolution.
Well, and to me, I think if you do the sponsorship thing, you know when you're further away from the business, then we're doing the same thing we're doing now.
Yeah, that's not gonna change.
I mean, at the end of the day, that from 5 that does nothing. But, yeah, I think I'm covered all in here, I'm good. So,
We gotta there's another meeting in here at 7. So there's another meeting in here at 7 too, just so you know.
JJ, you got any comments?
Further at this time, I'd like to thank Chad and Brad and Jeremy and Nate and everybody for coming in tonight. I think there was a lot of good perspective put out there for us to take a look at and help with an educated decision and craft an ordinance that hope will address some of the concerns that some of the local business owners have and come up with something good.
All right. Tom, you got anything further?
No, it's okay.
Right.
I just have to see the ordinance, see if I'm in favor of it.
I'm gonna let you write it.
You don't want me to write it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, everyone. We got another meeting at 7 o'clock. Somebody does here anyway, so.
Playground and rec. Don't we tell Kevin to kill it?
Yeah.